or I'll make this count." The voice sounded too small to stop anything, yet it cut the alley like a whistle. Vivian Stone felt brick bite her shoulder as a thick palm pinned her in place. The Marble and Oak Hotel still glowed at the block's end. The gala laughter had thinned to the clink of glasses and the hush that follows generosity. Here, behind the loading bay, rain made the asphalt shine like oil. 3 men, one at her shoulder, one rifling her clutch, one posted as lookout. "Watch first," the lookout said, then the bag. Vivian kept her tone low, and even the way she spoke to venture partners right before they blinked. "Take it. I'm not going to fight you." "That's good." The big one grinned because we enjoy cooperation. The small voice again, firmer now. "Last warning." They turned. A girl no taller than a trash bin stood at the alley mouth. She wore a coat, 2 big sneakers too thin, and a stare too steady for 8 years old. In her hand, a scuffed rubber ball. Behind her, a man in a navy work shirt stepped forward, one forearm across her without touching guardrail and permission at once. "Kid," the lookout called, smiling with all the wrong teeth. "This isn't recess." The man spoke without raising his voice. "Maya." "I know," she said. "When it matters." She set her feet like someone had taught her how to aim, turned her shoulder, and the ball left her fingers with a clean, unfussy snap. It struck the wrist of the man holding Vivian right on the tendon. Pain travels fast. He yelped and let go. The clutch dropped, spilling lipstick and a folded program into a rain pool. "Get her!" The lookout barked. He lunged, but the workshirt man moved first, not like a brawler, like a janitor who knew every hinge and lever in a building. He yanked down the rattling security gate enough to funnel the alley and stole the big men's space. Maya's second throw blurred past his shoulder and clapped against a cheekbone. The lookout reeled, hand-to-face language suddenly small. 2 shadows peeled from the edges, kids maybe 6 in all, appearing from a fire escape and behind a scooter. They weren't carrying knives. They held balls, rubber tennis, a faded red dodgeball with a bite taken out of the foam. Their faces were singed with focus the way faces look when they've practiced until games turn into habits. For Maya, a boy called, and the volley began. It was not elegant. It didn't need to be. One ball thumped a throat, another slapped an ear, one ricocheted off a knee and spun under a dumpster. The biggest man charged and caught a front wheel of the scooter on his shin. Gravity did the old reliable thing. Vivian's body wanted to freeze. Her mind did what she trained it to do: speak clearly, move toward light. She backed to the bricks, dialed with shaking fingers, and said to 911, "Assault 3 adult males, East Alley behind Marble and Oak. Non-lethal. Send officers and EMS." The lookout lunged again. The workshirt man turned him with a shoulder and sent him into the half-lowered gate, redirect, not strike. Air left the man like a secret. The third attacker cursed, looked at the children, looked at Vivian's phone, and decided the night no longer loved him. Sirens started as a rumble and found their color at the far end of the street. "Scatter," Maya said. They did over a fence up the grate into the dark slit of a service door. Not fear, rehearsal. Vivian looked at the girl who had rearranged the night. Rain slicked stray hairs to her forehead. Her chest rose and fell. The ball sat again in her palm as if it had never left. "You okay, ma'am?" the man asked. He was a few years from 40, with a face that had known both hope and overtime. "Yes," Vivian answered. "Thanks to you." To her, he said. The squad car nosed into the alley lights, washing the brick in emergency blue. 2 officers stepped out, hands cautious, hands where we can see 'em. Vivian lifted hers. The man did, too. Maya raised both arms without dropping the ball. "Lose the ball," the older officer said. Maya didn't. "She's a child," Vivian said. "She threw rubber. That's all." "What happened?" the younger one asked. "They cornered me," Vivian said, finding the exactness that always calmed a room. "These 2 men," she pointed, "attempted to take my watch and bag. She indicated the workshirt man prevented flight and kept things from escalating. The children defended at range. I called you. The officers measured her then, him, then the groaning men on the ground. Name's Vivian Stone," she said, too tired to disguise herself. The younger cop's eyebrows flicked. Not awe recognition. "And you, Sir Jack Carter." "And you kid Maya," the girl said. Steady, then added like a fact learned in school with an A. EMS slid into the scene, all gloves and headlamps. The big man's nose bled. The medic worked with professional boredom. Vivian noticed a scrape on her own elbow only when antiseptic bit it. "Lucky," the medic murmured. "Could have gone sideways." "Luck follows practice," Jack said without looking up. "You teach her to throw." The younger officer asked. Jack's mouth tugged. "I teach her when to throw." "Did we do wrong?" Maya asked. Not trembling, checking. "You saved me," Vivian said. "That's the simplest truth." The older cop gestured to the attackers. "You pressing charges, Ms. Stone?" Vivian looked at the men. Rage arrived quick and hot, then cooled into something colder and sharper. "Yes," she said. "On the assault. I'll sign your report. And I'd prefer no press." Statements took shape. Numbers were exchanged. The alley's volume dropped until only Rain spoke. Jack shifted his weight, ready to exit a scene he hadn't planned to enter. "Say good night, Maya," he said. "Good night," Maya told Vivian. She kept the ball in her palm as if it were both talisman and tool. "Wait," Vivian said. They waited. Words from her world lined up the ones that offered cards and calendars, and all of them felt wrong in this narrow place that had required courage, not contacts. She tried plain instead. "There's a field behind Roosevelt Elementary, isn't there?" Jack's eyes flicked in surprise. "It's something like a field." "I'd like to see it," she said. Saturday morning. He studied her the way men study doors for hinges, for locks, for how many times they've been opened and slammed. Why? "Because places tell the truth," she answered. "I'd like to hear it from the ground." Maya lifted the ball an inch. 8 o'clock, she said, as if assigning homework. Jack exhaled a breath that might have been a laugh and might have been permission. 8, he said. They moved toward the street. Sirens faded. Vivian felt the tremble leaving her muscles as the moment let go. Miss 8 Stone, the younger cop, said, returning with a clipboard. "Signature here, and a number for follow-up." She signed her real number. If the night taught anything, it was the cost of distance. Something tapped her shoe. She glanced down. The rubber ball. "You dropped this," Maya said from a few steps away. Vivian hadn't, but she picked it up. It was heavier than childhood. The seam fit the pad of her thumb like a groove in a familiar desk. "It's yours," she said. "Keep it till Saturday," Maya answered. "It helps you remember. Remember what timing." The word landed like a key in a lock. Jack touched 2 fingers to his temple, thanks that wasn't servile respect, that wasn't performance. They crossed through the blue wash of police lights and became 2 ordinary figures on a city sidewalk, one tall, one small, both walking like they knew where they were going. Vivian stayed. Rain stitched the air. She stared at the ball until the alley sharpened around it, the wet brick, the bent gate, the scooter with the brave wheel. Her elbow stung. Her heart did something she hadn't felt in years. It asked for more of the world, not less. At the alley's end, she paused and glanced back, not for nostalgia. She had no fondness for fear, but for the geometry of moments. This one had edges she could use. If she closed her eyes, she could still see the small figure at the entrance, the ball, a dark moon in a small palm, the sentence that opened the scene, "Leave her alone, or I'll make this count." Vivian tapped the ball against her hip, a soft metronome. "Throw when it matters," she said to the night, testing the words the way a musician tests a room. They rang true. The rain agreed. Somewhere down the block, a child laughed, light, unafraid, and the city felt less like a machine and more like a place you could choose on purpose. "You came back," Maya said, the rubber ball already nested in her palm like a promise she meant to keep. Saturday morning held the neighborhood in a soft grip, laundry lines tilting over alleys, a bus sighing at the corner, a church bell measuring time without asking anyone's permission. The lot behind Roosevelt Elementary sat between 2 low brick buildings. From a distance, it looked like a field. Up close, it was a patchwork of dirt and weeds with bottle caps winking in the sun and a chain-link fence that leaned the way tired people lean. Vivian had walked from 3 blocks out alone, ball tucked in her jacket pocket. She wore sneakers that had never met a boardroom and a navy windbreaker that said nothing about money. She had learned from the alley places, notice how you enter them. "Good morning," she said. "I brought coffee." She held out a cardboard carrier, 2 cups, and a small hot chocolate with a lid that never quite sits right. Jack took a cup with a nod, suspicion not erased, but given something warm to hold. "Maya, say thank you." "Thank you," Maya said then, like an adult offered a chair. In her own kitchen, we start with a walk. They walked the perimeter. The fence shook when Jack lifted it with 2 fingers. The backstop net was sun-faded and patched with zip ties. First base was a square of cardboard. Third was a brick someone had painted white and the rain had forgiven. Vivian crouched. "Glass here," she said quietly, picking 2 green shards. She didn't flinch. She slid them into a sandwich bag from her pocket. "And the right field line dips. Water will pool on game days." "You see it?" Jack said, surprised into respect. "I see what I look at," she answered. "I miss what I don't. So I look." They reached the back corner where a rusted light pole watched like an old sentinel who'd given up asking for help. "This is the worst of it," Jack said. "No lights we can trust, no permits to use the school's electricity after dusk, no budget for anything. We play until the shadows win." Maya kicked a pebble. "We play anyway." Vivian looked at the girl the way some people look at a sunrise, not because they didn't expect light, but because they weren't sure it would choose them again. "You threw it the right second," she said. "That's timing. Timing is half the world." Jack sipped, then cleared his throat. "Ms. Stone, Vivian," she said. "Vivian." He tried, careful. "People like you come through here sometimes. They drop a stack of equipment like rain-take photos and evaporate. The gear goes missing. The photos don't. I don't mean to be rude. I mean to be honest. I prefer honest," she said. "You can't repair what you won't name." He folded his arms, coffee balanced in one hand, the stance of a man who has watched broken things for a living, and started fixing them with whatever tool he had. "So, what are you offering, exactly?" "A field," she said. "Oh, not mine. Ours. And not charity." He waited. She let the sentence breathe, then built it. "I've set up community trusts before," she said. "The structure isn't complicated. The field and its improvements are deeded into a community trust, not to me, not to my company. The trust has a board, 3 residents, 2 parents, 1 youth representative, when appropriate 1 independent safety advisor. Bylaws require transparent books, open meetings, and term limits. No corporate logos, no naming rights. If I donate, I do it as a citizen, not a brand." Jack's gaze held. "Why the rules?" "Because money builds walls fast," she said. "Trust builds doors slower. Doors need hinges." Maya scrunched her face. "Hinges. Things that move and hold at the same time," Vivian said. "Like your wrist when you throw." Maya tried not to smile and failed. Jack tilted his head. "What about safety? We can't pretend we know what we don't." "Correct," Vivian said. "Here's the spine. We carry general liability insurance for the trust. We add D&O insurance for the board so volunteers aren't afraid to serve. Every adult who touches the program passes background checks, state and FBI. Every parent signs a waiver that's clear and fair. We post a written emergency action plan at the dugout. We fund an AED and training. The field layout separates spectators from play with compliant fencing. We build an ADA ramp and provide accessible seating, not because it's a box to tick, but because dignity isn't optional." Jack nodded despite himself. "And lights UL-listed fixtures on a schedule," she said. "Downcast to avoid glare, timed to shut off at curfew. We pull permits. We invite inspection. We want the city to say, 'Do it like they do it on Roosevelt.' Somewhere beyond the fence, a screen door slammed. A dog barked once at the audacity of morning. Jack made himself ask the question good men ask when they'd rather be done with the conversation. How much is this going to cost, and what do you want in return? Enough, she said, and nothing. People don't give nothing for nothing. I'm not people, she said. She let the answer sit in the spring air, then gentled it. I grew up 2 rent checks from a car back seat. A scholarship opened a door. I'm not paying the debt back. I'm paying it forward. There's a difference. He looked at her windbreaker at the sneakers that told a small truth at the ball shape in her pocket. And your company separate, she said. The trust is a 501c3. Donations go there. My corporate board can't claim credit or control. If they ask me why I'm here, I'll say, because sometimes staying is part of the job description of being human. Maya glanced from one adult to the other, measuring the invisible math between caution and hope. Who coaches? She asked. A real coach, Vivian said, with child safety training and a background that's about kids, not trophies. Practices will have ratio limits no more than 6 to 1. We build a schedule families can count on, not one that floats with whims. Jack's eyes softened, then cooled again. And when the cameras come, I won't invite them, she said. If they show, we don't pose. We play. I don't do ribbon cuttings on children. He let the line work on him. When he finally spoke, it was slower. You talk like you've already decided. I have, she said. But this only works if you decide to. I can write checks. I cannot write trust. Silence made room for another presence. From a second-floor window, an older woman, hair wrapped in a scarf, eyes that had watched the block for longer than some buildings had stood, leaned out. You the lady from the news, she called. No, Vivian said. I'm the lady who brought a shovel. The woman's mouth twitched. Then you can stay. Maya laughed. Jack tried not to and failed. That's Miss Jean, he said. She knows who belongs before the rest of us do. Miss Jean lifted a mug as if to bless the dirt. Start with the trash bags, she advised. Hope is easier when it doesn't cut your shoes. So they started with trash bags. No speech, no photo. Maya wore gloves too big and did not complain when they slipped. Jack raked with a rhythm learned fixing other people's messes. Vivian scouted edges and bent to the work in a way that said her back would feel it later, and she accepted the cost. As they worked, they talked the ordinary talk that grows into trust if you let it breathe. What do you do? Maya asked, curious without awe. I build things people can't see, Vivian said. Software that helps hospitals move faster, schools track attendance cities, time lights. It works best when no one says my name. Maya nodded, like that made sense. I like it when the ball leaves my hand and I can't see it, but I know where it's going. That's called faith, Jack said. That's called mechanics, Vivian countered, smiling. And a little faith. They cleared the right field dip and uncovered an old baseline ghosting through crabgrass. Jack knelt and brushed the dirt back like a paleontologist discovering a small history. Looks like the kids fought for a diamond before he murmured. They did, Miss Jean called from her window. Before the storms took the fence and the budget took the rest. Vivian straightened, chest rising as if the horizon had just tilted in her favor. We'll put it back, she said. We'll write it down so it stays when we're tired. Her phone buzzed. She ignored it. It buzzed again. She checked, made a face, and offered a small apology. 1 minute. She stepped to the fence and took the call. Sloan, she said, voice low. I'm on a field, Sloan Park. Her communications director wasted no time. Vivian, the alley incident is on 2 blogs. If you want to control the narrative, we need a statement and a frame. Local billionaire nearly mugged after gala saved by community. It writes itself. Vivian looked at Maya, who had moved a plastic bottle cap like it were a landmine and not trash. It doesn't write itself, she said. It writes over people. Press is coming either way, Sloan warned. If we don't direct, they will. Optics matter. Optics don't keep ankles safe, Vivian said. Listen, if anything goes out, it's about a community trust, not about me. no logo, no ribbon, no pull quotes about leadership, and no faces of miners. The story is the fence, the lights, the EAP pinned to a dugout wall. Sloan was silent so long Vivian thought the call had dropped. "You're serious?" "I am. This will be hard to explain to the board." "Then tell them this," Vivian said, eyes on the dirt. "I'd rather be the woman who stayed than the one who trended." She ended the call, slipped the phone into her pocket, and returned to the work. Jack watched her like a man measuring lumber before he built a step. "Everything okay?" he asked. "Everything true," she said. By late morning, they had cleared a rectangle that looked enough like a field to be called one again. Miss Jean clapped once from her window. A boy with a hand-me-down glove wandered over and stayed leaning into the fence as if presents were a donation. The sun brightened as if to underline a point no one dared say aloud. They put down the tools. Vivian took a breath and reached for the part that still needed saying. "Jack," she began, "I want to do this right. That means contracts. It means a trust agreement we can all read. It means budgets you can challenge and minutes you can quote back to me if I forget. It means if I disappear the field doesn't. You planning to disappear?" "No," she said, "but life plans for us sometimes. Good structures survive bad days." Jack rubbed the heel of his hand against the back of his neck, a habit that said the past had landed there, and set up camp. "I have one condition. Name it." He thought another beat, making sure the words were the right tools. "You show up for 30 days. Not press days, not days when it's easy. 30 days that include a missed delivery, a bad weather morning, a call from a lawyer, and a kid's tears. If you're still standing on this dirt after that, I sign whatever your trust lawyer brings, assuming Miss Jean doesn't veto it." Miss Jean laughed out loud. "He's not wrong." Vivian looked down at her hands. There was dirt under the nails now, and the sight made her inexplicably hopeful. She looked up again. 30 days, she said. "Count them however you count real life. At the end, we sign and the pen belongs to the neighborhood." Jack held out his hand. She didn't take it yet. "No handshake until it's earned," she said. He smiled without showing teeth. "Fair." Maya stepped between them, palm out. "Time starts now," she declared, and dropped the ball into Vivian's hand like a baton in a relay she expected the team to finish. Vivian pocketed it. The weight was familiar now. "I'll see you Monday," she said. "Monday is trash day," Jack said. "The alley behind the school floods. We dig a channel or the left field becomes a pond." "I'll bring a shovel," Vivian said. "And gloves that fit," Maya added. 2 pairs, Vivian promised. 1 to use, 1 to lend. They stood for a moment in the kind of silence that doesn't press for more, just holds what is. A light breeze frisked the fence. Somebody down the block put on a Motown record, and a chorus from another century anchored the present. Vivian started toward the street. At the gate, she paused and turned back. "Jack," she said. "Yeah, thank you for the night you didn't let get worse." He nodded once. "Thank you for the morning you let get better." Miss Jean raised her mug as a benediction. "Go on then," she called. "Hope won't build itself." Vivian walked away slowly enough to memorize the corridor of buildings that would now be her commute. She reached the corner, pressed the walk button, and felt the ball knock softly against her thigh with each step, like a metronome for choices. 30 days. If she had learned anything from money and code and boardrooms, it was that you can do a lot in 30 days when you mean to. Back at the field, Maya stared at the place where Vivian had stood as if there might be a footprint worth saving. Jack watched his daughter, then the sky, then the fence. He had seen promises wash away. He had also seen weeds lift concrete when they insisted. He could not say which this was yet. Dad Maya asked. "Yeah, bug." She didn't flinch. "No," he said. She didn't. Maya tossed the spare ball in the air and caught it with a crisp hand. "When it matters," she said softly, "to no one and to everyone you throw." Jack looked at the rectangle of earth and imagined what could fit there besides weeds, chalk lines straight as forgiveness lights that came on when they were supposed to kids whose names would be known by the way teammates called them at dusk. He imagined a clipboard. He imagined permission forms. He imagined doing all the boring, stubborn things that make joy safe. Monday, he said more to himself than to anyone. We start Monday. And somewhere beyond the block in a different part of the city, a woman who had spent her life making invisible systems hum took out a notebook and wrote in neat architectural script, Day 1, show up. Day 2:30, stay. She underlined stay until the paper dented. This isn't a field, the man said, setting a whistle on his palm like a gavel. It's a vow nobody wrote down. He had salt in his beard, sun in his skin, and posture that made slouching feel impolite. A laminated badge clipped to his windbreaker read Miguel Alvarez. Behind him, the lot spread out in a tired rectangle left field, still damp from last night's sprinkler mishap, a light pole leaning as if listening too closely. Coach Alvarez Jack asked. Just Miguel, until we earn each other, the man said, eyes sweeping the dirt with the auditing calm of a pilot before takeoff. He pointed with 2 fingers. Backstop's too near the bench. Spectator line is pretend. There's glass where outfielders fall. And that he added squinting dead center is a dip that's going to twist someone's ankle. Vivian liked him immediately. The man's sentences were short and non-negotiable like specs you can build on. Still in Miguel blew the quietest breath through his teeth and smiled at last. I'm in because you didn't ask if the whistle would look good in photos. He gathered the kids 6 at first, then more leaking in from porches and stoops as word spread that a man with a whistle intended to make afternoons mean something. Maya anchored herself on the first baseline ball in palm eyes, bright. Ground rules, Miguel said, voice steady without needing to shout. Number 1, safety beats swagger. If you rattle your skull, you sit. If lightning talks, we listen. Number 2, you'll sign in. That teaches you the first skill of adult life, showing up. Number 3, respect is the only position everybody plays. A boy with a shirt 3 sizes too big raised a hand. What's number 4? Number 4, Miguel said, is that number 3 covers more than you think. They laughed the awkward laugh of children learning to trust a stranger's authority. Then they ran drills. Not flashy fundamentals. Feet under shoulders. Glove to the ground. Throw to a chest, not to a hope. The whistle sang in intervals that kept time with the day. Vivian worked the edge. She unpacked cones from a cardboard box, planted them like small promises. She measured the backstop distance with a tape she'd brought from a hardware store that had seen more of her this week than her corner office. Jack raked the outfield dip until it stopped being a rumor and became a repair. Maya moved like a metronome someone had set right. By noon, sweat darkened T-shirts and the field looked less like a complaint and more like a beginning. Miss Jean watched from her second-floor window and offered a thumbs-up she did not often give the world. Vivian wiped her forehead with the back of her hand. Sloane's name lit her phone, the ring buzzing like a fly that refused to find a different room. She answered on speaker because this was the kind of place where secrets felt impolite. How's my boss, the incognito philanthropist, Sloane asked. I'm not incognito, Vivian said. I'm muddy. Same effect on the tabloid, Sloane said. Then, softer, Gregory called a special committee meeting. He wants a risk memo about personal involvement. He's concerned about liability optics and that word he likes, precedent. Vivian looked at Miguel moving a cone 2 inches with the care of a surgeon. Tell Gregory he'll have it by end of day. The trust is separate. I'm writing private checks. No corporate logo, no legal entanglement. You can be legally right and publicly wrong, Sloane warned. We need a line if press asks. Give them the line I'm giving the kids, Vivian said. We're building a place where safety beats swagger. Sloane exhaled through a smile. That might work. Also, do you want the human interest request from Channel 4? They want to call Maya the Alley Angel. Vivian's eyes found Maya working a soft toss with a girl who threw like she was asking permission from the air. No minors' faces, Vivian said. The story is process. The story is that we're not winging anything. Tell them to film cones, Copy Sloane said and hung up before she could soften the instruction with an apology. Vivian pocketed the phone and walked to Jack, who was tapping a stake into the spectator line. Your PR person? Okay with all this? She will be, Vivian said. She knows how to tell the truth without turning it into a trick. Jack nodded, then glanced at Miguel correcting a batting stance with 2 gentle fingers on a shoulder blade. He's the real thing. He is, Vivian said. Miguel clapped once. Water break. The kids swarmed the cooler like a parable. Maya waited her turn, then turned to Vivian. You see the dip, now I saw it earlier, Vivian said. Now I see the fix. Maya grinned and handed a paper cup to the girl beside her. Her decisions were already contagious. That evening, at a diner with a pie case that still believed in glass, Vivian typed on her laptop while Jack circled dates on a paper calendar with a pencil that had seen better erasers. I can make Tuesdays and Thursdays by 5, he said. I clear the floor at the office building by 3, then bus across town. I'll mop weekends to close the hours. We'll pay for assistant coaches, Vivian said without looking up. You won't have to carry it alone. Jack made a sound that might have been gratitude and might have been a swallowed protest. Carrying alone's a habit. It dies slow. A television above the counter played minor league highlights. The sound was low, but the camera loved slow motion, so every throw became a poem. Miguel came in, took the stool beside them, and nodded at the screen. Used to look like that, he said. Used to, Vivian asked. For some of us, Miguel said, eyes slipping to Jack with the precision of a compass needle. Jack laughed once, then shook his head. It was a bus league and a dream. The bus stayed. The dream got off 2 stops early. Miguel pulled a phone from his pocket, thumbed through something, then angled the screen. This. It was Jack, a decade younger in a uniform the color of borrowed hope. The camera angle was cheap. The velocity wasn't. He stood tall, loose wrist ball, leaving like a sentence you don't need to edit. The catcher framed a strike at the knees, and the bat did not disagree. Where'd you find that? Jack asked, voice equal parts wonder and discomfort. Internet never forgets a good motion, Miguel said. Neither do eyes that watched for a living. Vivian kept her face still the way you do when someone shows you a photo from a former life you were not invited to. What happened? She asked, not softly, not loud. Jack sipped coffee that had earned the right to be called bitter. Warehouse, night shift. Pallet slipped. My elbow tried to catch 200 pounds of somebody else's mistake. Miguel's mouth tightened. Surgery. Not the kind that fixes strangers with day jobs, Jack said. He tapped the inside of his elbow, tracing a scar most people never noticed. Workers' comp covered the first round. Then the company changed contracts and I changed realities. I had a toddler and no appetite for courtrooms. Who was the contractor? Vivian asked. Logistics outfit, Jack said. New name every acquisition. The man on the building took his name off the trucks when the stories got loud. Victor. Something. Hale Miguel supplied as if he'd long ago filed the name under unfinished business. Vivian absorbed it. She didn't chase it. This was not the moment for enemies. This was the moment for structure. She returned to the memo-writing language that took heat and turned it into guardrails. General liability in place. D&O bound background checks, initiated waiver drafts pending EAP in development. Miguel watched her type. You don't bluff, he said. I build first, talk later, Vivian answered. Good, Miguel said. Because kids can smell a bluff faster than dogs smell dinner. By midweek, the field began attracting the right kind of gravity. Jaden from the next block tried on a donated glove like it might choose him back. Mari, quick feet quicker, a smile hit grounders with a ferocity that made the dirt confess. Parents drifted to the fence arms, crossed faces, skeptical until their children laughed, then less skeptical. Sloane came by in jeans and a ponytail that said she had stopped being a press release and started being a person. She dropped off a stack of consent forms with a note attached. No photos without permission. No names on the internet unless a parent writes it on purpose. "Thank you," Vivian said. "Thank you for not making me spin straw into gold," Sloane replied. "Gregory read your risk memo." He underlined phrases like adequately capitalized and arm's length. "He wants a contingency fund." "He'll have one," Vivian said. "The trust will hold 3 months of expenses." Safety doesn't happen month to month. Sloane's eyes moved from the cones to Miguel's whistle to the way Maya laced a glove on a younger kid's hand without making a lesson out of the kindness. "If they ask me what we're doing here," she said, "I'm going to say we're making light where the grid forgot to run a line." "Say we're making habits," Vivian said. "Light is a habit when you wire it right." Day 15. Trouble knocked without the courtesy of a rattle. Jack arrived early with a toolbox he trusted like a friend. He found the shed door hanging half open, the padlock pried and curled like a question mark hammered wrong. Inside, buckets of balls sat undisturbed. Bats leaned where they'd leaned yesterday. Nothing stolen. Behind him, the backstop net sighed in the breeze, slashed from top rail to dirt. A quiet injury. He stood very still. Then he called Vivian, and then Miguel in that order. By the time Vivian reached the field, the cut looked like a wound on a patient they all loved, but couldn't afford to resuscitate twice. Maya arrived at a run, stopped short, and bit her lip. Why would someone hurt the net? "Because some people can't stand to see something mended," Miguel said. He lifted the flap of netting with 2 fingers. "A field isn't dirt. It's a promise." Jack's jaw worked once hard. Then a promise had better be patchable. They got to work. Miguel fetched zip ties and a needle the size of hope. Vivian called the hardware store and bought 20 feet of replacement mesh and the kind of lock that doesn't tell you its name. Miss Jean lowered a spool of twine in a grocery bag from her window with the air of a patron saint for people who didn't earn her patience but got it anyway. "Don't let them win," she said. "Whoever them is, they love the dark." Sloane arrived in a rideshare with a face that meant business. "I talked to Ortiz at the bodega," she said. "His security camera points this way." Jack and Miguel followed her across the street. Mr. Ortiz, a man whose mustache had seen marriages and elections come and go, led them to a back room where a monitor hummed with the indifference electronics develop when they've seen too much. "There," Ortiz said, jabbing a finger. The footage was grainy but generous. At 2:11 a.m., a figure in a hooded jacket approached the shed. The person moved with the caution of someone who didn't want to be seen and the efficiency of someone who'd done this before. A pry bar did its simple work. The person slipped inside, stayed less than a minute, slipped out, and went to the backstop like a man checking a fence line. A box cutter flashed. The net sagged. The person left. Sloane paused the image as the figure cut across the frame, a shoulder turning just enough to catch the logo on the jacket sleeve, a stark shield with a diagonal stripe and a name stitched in white. Iron Watch. Miguel leaned forward until the pixelation became a language. "I know that patch," he said. "They do night patrols for half the warehouses on the south side." "Hale uses them," Sloane said, voice flat, not dramatic. "His distribution centers, his construction sites, his sponsorship banners at the business awards wear that stripe like cologne." Vivian felt the information settle into the part of her mind that handled problems without promising revenge. She didn't look at Jack. She didn't need to. She could feel the old scar on his elbow figure into this math like a variable finally named. Mr. Ortiz adjusted his glasses. "You want a copy?" "Yes," Vivian said. "Please." He burned the clip onto a thumb drive with the solemnity of handing over a family recipe. Sloane slipped it into a small case she hadn't planned to carry today and patted the pocket like you pat a passport on a foreign curb. "What now?" Jack asked. The words were measured, but the air around them wasn't. Miguel answered first. "We mend. We file a report. We don't turn the field into a courtroom." Vivian nodded, eyes on the door on the morning on the children who would wander toward a net that either kept them safer or reminded them that safe is a verb. We add a camera with a sign that says, "Recording in progress," she said. We replace the lock. We call the non-emergency line. We document without drama, and we show up tomorrow like the cut was a test and not a verdict. Sloane met her gaze. And if press asks, tell them truth without names, Vivian said. A net got cut. A community stitched it. The end. Jack flexed his hand the way men do when they're teaching fists to stay open. And if Hale's people want to play around our edges, Miguel's whistle hung silent on his chest, gleaming in the dim of the back room. He touched it with 2 fingers. Then we make the edges stronger than the middle. They stepped out into the daylight. Across the street, Maya and 2 younger kids were feeding replacement mesh through the chain link like they were weaving a story back together. Vivian looked at her watch, then at her calendar in her head. Day 15. She had 15 days left on Jack's clock and 1 more reason to keep it. "Let's write this down," she said. "Every repair deserves minutes." Sloane nodded, already composing a logline for a document and not a headline for a show. Behind them, Mr. Ortiz called out, holding up the thumb drive between forefinger and thumb like an amulet. "You forgot your proof." Vivian slipped it into her pocket next to the rubber ball. It was heavier than plastic. It felt like the next page. The first pitch looked like a dare to the week itself. Miguel set it under his breath whistle tucked in his palm. Across the dirt, Maya set her feet on the cardboard square they were calling a mound. Jaden squatted behind a thrift store mask glove, steady as a promise. The Maple Avenue Tigers kids from 6 blocks north in matching T-shirts that had survived 3 seasons tapped bats and tried to look unimpressed. No banners, no music, just a whistle and a vow. On the chain link, a laminated emergency action plan fluttered where Vivian had pinned it that morning. A bright red AED sat in a case under the bench. A plastic folder held waivers with signatures in careful parent handwriting. Sloane stood by the table checking off names like a bouncer for joy. Miss Jean presided from her window with a kitchen timer and opinions. "Ready," Miguel called. "Play ball." Maya nodded once and exhaled a little steam engine changing tracks. First pitch 4 seams, thumb relaxed, cut the plate at the knees. The bat never moved. Strike 1. A few parents clapped like they were new to the language of baseball but fluent in awe. Again, Jack murmured to himself. Again. The second climbed out of the hand and fell off an invisible table. The Tigers' leadoff hitter, a boy whose height made adults talk about potential, took a late, confused swipe. Strike 2. Show him the bus schedule, Miguel said, quiet enough to be felt and not heard. She did. High fastball ride just out of reach. Swing. Air. Strike 3. The field inhaled. Mr. Ortiz across the street leaned his phone against a bag of rice in his window and let it film. Somewhere in the second inning, a teacher named Ms. Hill posted a 30-second clip to the neighborhood page with the caption, "Little Arm." Big truth. People with no time for baseball watched it twice. Vivian did not look at her phone. She watched the way the team moved between pitches, how Maya made eye contact with Jaden before every throw, how Mari patted a shoulder without turning it into theater, how Yun scooped a grounder after booting the last 2 and threw 2 first without apology. Fundamentals weren't flashy, but they made games turn. Between innings, Miguel gathered the kids in a half circle. "We don't admire our own highlight reel," he said. "We build the next clip. Eyes up, feet under. Remember the rule? Safety beats swagger. Safety beats swagger," they murmured back a chant that felt strangely like a map. The Tigers' coach, a man with forearms like tree trunks and a capacity for grace, shook Miguel's hand. "Your pitcher's got a wrist from heaven." "Her mechanics learned it," Miguel said. "Heaven signed the waiver." They played 5 innings. Jaden threw out a runner who forgot humility on his way to second. Marie turned a single into a triple with the kind of hustle that makes a whole neighborhood stand up taller. The Tigers clapped for good plays, and when the score didn't matter, both coaches let the worst batters hit. It looked like sport when sport remembers what it's for. After the final out, the children lined up and slapped gloves like a secular liturgy. "Good game, good game, good game." Miss Jean banged her spoon against a mug. That she declared to no one, and everyone was a proper afternoon. They gathered at the third base line for water and orange slices that tasted like the first day of summer. Vivian took a step back, giving the moment room, and found Jack beside her, arms crossed, dirt in his hair, a smile he wasn't protecting anymore. "You see the dip now?" he asked. "I see a level line," she said, "and a dozen kids who believe it." Sloane walked up with her phone, eyes wide. It's not a wildfire, but it's a nice kitchen fire. The clip's got 12,000 views in 2 hours. Local blog is calling it a miracle lot. Vivian's lips pressed, not unkind. Miracles invite photography. "I prefer receipts." Sloane nodded. "Then let's post a receipt. A shot of the EAP, the AED, the waivers, the cones. Caption, 'We don't wing it.' No faces." "That I like," Vivian said. Jack glanced between them. "Do what you want with receipts, but we're not staging anything." Vivian turned to him. "We won't. We don't pose. We practice." He held her gaze, then tipped his chin. Agreement, not surrender. Behind them, Miguel called for one last drill relay throws. The kids hustled like joy had a schedule. An evening breeze lifted the smell of cut weeds and new plans. For a minute, the block looked like a postcard someone might mail to themselves later to prove the day had happened. The Tigers waved and peeled off. Parents gathered folding chairs. A few neighbors who had not intended to become spectators found themselves reluctant to go home. Vivian walked the perimeter, noting spots for signage. "No hitting before coach arrives. No climbing on fences, no cleats in the street." Safety, as she kept telling anyone who asked, was a habit, not a feeling. Her phone buzzed. Gregory. She answered because he would not stop. Afternoon, Gregory. "Looks like your hobby is trending," he said, managing to make the word both affectionate and accusatory. "I've got directors forwarding me links with little notes like, 'Is this ours? We need a position.'" "The position is that we are separate," Vivian said. "I'm donating personally to a 501c3 community trust. No corporate logos, no corporate control, no risk to the brand. You are the brand," he said. "If a kid gets hurt on a field the internet calls Vivian's Field, your separation won't fit in a headline." Vivian watched Maya correct Yoon's grip without turning correction into shame. "Then we'll make the field safer than the internet," she said. "You're very certain for someone standing in a liability." He softened a fraction. "Look, I think what you're doing is noble, but precedent is a jealous god. We have shareholders. We will need to explain this if it goes sideways, preferably before. Sloane will send you the memo," she said. "General liability bound, D&O in place, background checks, waivers, EAP, ADA ramp on the blueprint, UL listed fixtures on order. We're not guessing." "You sound like you built an operating system," he said dryly. "I did," she said. "It's called Do It Right or Don't Do It." He sighed, a man who had walked too many carpets and hadn't felt dirt in weeks. "At least let our PR draft a quote for you." "No quotes. Not now." "Why, because Vivian said, voice calm as a field at dusk, I grew up on free lunch tickets and sneakers bought at the church thrift. The adults who saved my life didn't do interviews. They packed snacks, they drove, they stayed through rain. I'm trying to match that energy." Silence landed like respect. "I didn't know," Gregory said. "I don't lead with it," she said. "I just don't forget it. I'll tell the committee you're stubborn," he said. "But prepared. Tell them we're lighting a field," she said. And we checked the breaker twice. They hung up and the evening slid toward gold. The school's old fixtures warmed with a hum like a bee becoming confident. Lights blinked on, bathing the dirt in a clean municipal glow. "Look at that," Miguel said softly. "We got a sunset you can play under." Maya tossed a ball in the air just to watch the leather rise into that light turn and return home. "Feels like a real park," she said. "It is a real park," Jack answered. Vivian let herself stand still long enough to memorize this exact frame. Children under safe light, a fence-mended neighbors lingering because no one wanted to be first to leave. The rubber ball in her pocket knocked once-twice like a clock with a single hand. Phones chimed as they do now, all at once. Sloane's, Vivian's, Miguel's, even Mr. Ortiz's across the street. The sound was more than a coincidence. It was a chorus. Sloane glanced at her screen and the color left her face. "Email," she said. "City Infrastructure Oversight." Subject line: "Immediate suspension of temporary use." Vivian opened hers. The language was institutional and precise. Due to an anonymous complaint alleging non-compliance with spectator separation, lighting certification, and after-hours supervision, your temporary evening use of the Roosevelt lot is suspended pending inspection. Power-to-field fixtures will be de-energized at 1900 hours. Contact Naomi Chen to schedule review. Attempting to bypass de-energization may result in fines. She checked the time. 6:58 p.m. As if the city were listening to its own sentence, the lights blinked once-twice and went out. The field fell into sudden blue, the kind of twilight that makes edges difficult. A collective sound rose, not a groan, exactly, not fear. More like disappointment being careful not to become anger. Miguel's whistle stayed silent. Jack turned toward the breaker box as if he might negotiate with it. Maya looked up at the dead fixtures and then at Vivian, not accusing, measuring. "This is about that video," Mari said, voice small and certain. "It's about a complaint," Vivian said evenly. "Complaints get answered with compliance." Sloane was already typing, thumbs a blur. "I'll reach Naomi. We'll be first on her calendar. We'll show paper. We'll invite them to bring a tape measure and a flashlight and 3 clipboards. We have nothing to hide." Mr. Ortiz stepped out of his bodega and lifted 2 camp lanterns, one in each hand. "You want light tonight?" he asked. Miguel shook his head. "No games in the dark. Safety beats swagger. Kids started gathering gear without being told. Orange peels found the trash bags. Cones nested in their stack like Russian dolls who believed in community. Hey," Jack called softly so only the nearest could hear, and then louder so all of them did. "We're not done. We're just—" Paused. "We show up tomorrow same time. We rake. We plan. We're not going anywhere." Maya slid her hand into his the way she did when she was little and streets felt bigger. "We'll be here," she said, and then aimed her voice at Vivian. Right, Vivian said. The word felt heavier than yes and truer than maybe. She put her phone away like it had said enough for the night. "We don't play under lights we can't trust. We build the ones we can." On the fence, the laminated EAP stirred in the small wind the outage had made audible. Miguel took it down, smoothed it, and hung it back up as if to say that paper and resolve were kin. They walked out together, kids, parents, a coach, a janitor, a woman who had learned to stay. The streetlights along Maple Avenue burned as if nothing had happened. In the lot behind the school, the dark wasn't dangerous. It was just waiting for proof. At the corner, Vivian felt the rubber ball in her pocket bump her leg like a reminder. "Throw when it matters," she said under her breath. "Tomorrow matters," Jack said. Sloane lifted her phone like a lantern. "Then we get there early. The lights went out last night," Naomi Chen said, "but this morning is for seeing." She stood at the gate with a clipboard and a comm that did not wobble. No camera crew, no entourage, just a city windbreaker steel-toe boots and the measured presence of someone whose job is to keep strangers safe and never trend for it. "I'm Naomi," she added. "Infrastructure oversight. I don't do politics, I do checklists." Vivian nodded. "We do paper. Good," Naomi said, "because the city listens when paper speaks clearly." She clicked her pen and stepped onto the dirt. Miguel fell in one step behind as if escorting dignity itself. Jack flanked the other side, toolbox in hand, not decoration, but intent. Maya stood with the team at the first base line like a little board of directors learning what compliance looks like. Naomi touched the backstop with 2 fingers. She paced off the distance to the bench. She looked at the spectator line at the chain link at the sad post that used to be a light. She knelt and checked the grade at the gate with a pocket level. She read the laminated emergency action plan out loud the way a teacher reads a poem, clean and without drama. Items, she said. Number 1, spectator separation. You need a clear barrier between fans and play. 4 feet minimum at the foul lines, 6 behind the backstop. No gaps. No, we'll keep an eye out. Miguel wrote it down as if notes were a sport. Number 2, lighting. When re-energized fixtures must be UL listed for outdoor use and installed per NEC. Angled down. Timers set to curfew. No makeshift cords. No borrowing power from the school without a permit stamped twice. Vivian nodded. Fixtures are on order. Electrician is licensed, insured, and cranky in the ways that comfort me. Good, Naomi said. Number 3, ADA access. Build a ramp from the sidewalk to the gate slope no steeper than 1 to 12 with handrails at compliant heights. Provide 1 accessible viewing area with stable surface. Paint it on the map. Then build the map. Jack's pencil paused. Handrails we can do. Concrete's a cost. Vivian didn't blink. We'll pour it. We'll call neighbors with floats and patience. Naomi turned the page. Number 4, EAP drill. I appreciate the paper, but the first time a kid sprains an ankle is not the first time the adults should meet each other. You will run a drill. You will call the non-emergency line and announce the drill. You will time how long it takes to get from whistle to help on the way. You will assign roles: the caller, the crowd, control the gate guide, the kid wrangler. Miguel almost smiled. I like you. I like whatever keeps bones unbroken, Naomi replied. She initialed a box and looked up. I'll be back. You meet these 4, we restore night use. Questions. Vivian lifted a hand. 2. 1. While we're suspended, can kids practice under their own light sources if we don't play lanterns, truck fixtures, and the lot glow sticks? No games, Naomi said. No hard throws, no bats. Conditioning and walkthroughs only. And if you use a truck's floodlights, the truck stays off the field. Parked legal cords secured, no trip hazards. You'll send me a plan. 2, Vivian said. If we complete all items within a week, can we take your first re-inspection slot? Naomi capped her pen. If you send me photos every night by 7 p.m., showing progress, you can have my first slot. I care about effort I can verify. She tore off the official notice and taped it to the fence herself. Not a threat. A boundary. Listen, she said, lowering her voice. I don't shut neighborhoods. I shut risk. I'm rooting for you because the city looks better when places like this are boringly safe. Boring is the goal, Vivian said. Naomi shook Jack's hand like she meant it. Mr. Carter, you look like a man who fixes before he speaks. I try, he said. She nodded once to Maya. You're the pitcher. Yes, ma'am. Good. Learn to love your legs and your shoulder equally. That's how you throw forever. Maya tucked the advice away like a spare ball. Naomi turned, stepped off the field, and didn't look back. Professionals rarely do. They trust their notes and the people who took them. They did not post outrage. They posted assignments. By noon, a contractor's truck idled at the curb, and 2 men with forearms that looked like they believed in early mornings unloaded rebar and forms. Vivian walked the site with the foreman, a man named Dal, with a Boston cap and respect for string lines. Ramp here, Dal said, snapping chalk like a spell. We'll cut the curb tomorrow, pour Wednesday if the sky behaves. Handrail posts tonight set plumb. Think 112 with a 5x5 landing halfway, Vivian said. We want class, not compliance theater. Dal grinned. Some clients want half a job twice. You want 1 job once. Budget prefers 1 job once, Vivian said. At the same time, an electrician named Rosa arrived with a permit folder fat enough to sleep on. She eyed the old light pole the way a surgeon eyes a case study. We'll replace, not resurrect, she decided. New poles, new heads, NRTL labels, downcast optics, timer box with lockout. I'll be fussy. You'll thank me. I like fussy, Vivian said. They cut and dug and measured. Jack moved like an extra set of hands that knew which end of a tool to trust. Miguel taped off a safer spectator line with bright yellow webbing that clasped to temporary stanchions like they'd been built for this exact block. Sloan printed new "No Play Without Coach" signs with font big enough to read from a car window. At 4, Miguel called the kids to the fence. Until power's back, he said we run walkthroughs only. No bats, no hard throws. We teach feet. We teach eyes. We run a drill the city asked for because city asks matter. Is it like a fire drill, a boy asked? It's like Love Miguel said. We practice it before we need it. He assigned roles. Caller, he said, pointing to Sloan. You have a calm voice and a phone that never dies. On brand, Sloan said. Gate guide, he said to Mr. Ortiz, who had ambled over in his apron. You meet EMS on the sidewalk. You wave them in like VIPs. You keep the gate clear, Copy Ortiz said, as if he had been waiting his whole life to do something better than reshelve bread. Crowd control, he said to Miss Jean, who had come down the stairs, cane-tapping rhythm. You're already in charge. Now it's official. She lifted her chin. I'll move folks with my voice and not my cane unless they insist. Kid wranglers. Miguel finished pointing to 2 parents who always showed. You gather non-injured players to the muster spot, that big square of chalk behind third. You count heads twice. You don't look at the drama. They practiced. Miguel blew the whistle. Maya dropped to a knee beside Yun, who pretended to twist an ankle like he wanted an Oscar. Sloan called 911 but prefaced with drill call, no dispatch needed, then practiced the sentence that steadies operators, location, nature of injury, number of patients, hazards controlled. Mr. Ortiz met invisible EMS at the gate and opened it like a doorman who only bowed for ambulances. Miss Jean shepherded well-meaning onlookers back with praise and volume. Parents counted. Miguel timed. 2 minutes, 29 seconds to help on the way, he announced. We get it under 2 by week's end. Again, Vivian said. Again, Maya echoed. They ran the drill twice more. The 3rd time it was less theater and more muscle memory, the way tying shoes becomes script. When dusk slid down the brick, Rosa cut the power to everything that hummed. A neighbor backed his pickup to the curb and clicked on 4 mounted floods pointed away from the field up into the oak canopy, reflecting a soft wash down. Children snapped glow sticks in blue and green and laced them into shoelaces and wrists. The lot glowed like a low tide. No games, Miguel reminded. No games, they answered. What they did looked like choreography. Side steps along the baseline. Shadow throws with empty hands. Relay footwork between cones like the ground itself was a metronome. Maya taught a younger kid how to square hips without squaring fear. Feels like practice in a story, the boy said. It is, she said. We're the part before the good part. Jack watched Vivian in the half-light arms folded against a chill that wasn't the air. You could be at a boardroom, he said, or a beach, or any other B-word rich people like. She smiled without looking at him. I like this B-word. Bother, he teased. Budget belonging, she said. He was quiet a long time. Then, you ever afraid you'll do all this and it won't stick? Every hour, she said. That's why we do it every hour. He nodded. I'm learning that showing up is a discipline, not a mood. Exactly, she said. Love works the same way. He didn't answer that. He didn't need to. They stood with their shoulders almost touching, watching a bunch of kids practice, not because somebody was watching, but because they had decided who they wanted to be. By 9, the truck lights cut. The glow sticks looked like comets in small hands. Parents collected children, thank yous passed like bread, and the block remembered it had apartments and dishes and bedtimes. Vivian sent Naomi 5 photos with timestamps, stanchions secured ramp forms, laid permit folder open, EAP drill log, signed kids doing walkthroughs without bats. Received, Naomi texted back 2 minutes later. Good, keep sending. The next 2 days stitched themselves with ordinary miracles. Dal's crew poured the ramp in a tidy rectangle that made the block look like a promise kept. Rosa set new poles with concrete boots and checked every lug, every ground, every breaker. Miguel shortened the spectator line and added a line of cheap folding chairs labeled Nana seats, because dignity includes somewhere to sit. Sloane stood at a printer that wouldn't die and fed it sign after sign. On the third evening, a light rain came, the fine kind that makes concrete freckles and complicates tempers. No one left. They practiced under the pickup's wash and the sky's soft percussion. The glow sticks painted arcs the rain couldn't erase. Maya tied one around the AED handle with a flourish. "So even the box can find itself," she said. Miss Jean laughed. "That child is going to run this block by Thursday." "Thursday's for inspections," Miguel said. "She can run it Friday." Vivian took more photos, added notes, and sent them. Naomi's replies stayed brief and human. Handrails look right. Love the muster spot sign. Timer box, good lock. Run the drill once with me watching. On the fourth afternoon, Naomi returned in the same boots and the same posture. The ramp had cured handrails cool and steady. The stanchions no longer looked like a metaphor. They looked like a boundary. The new poles rose like plain sentinels. Rosa flicked one head on just enough to show the label. Naomi checked it with a flashlight like a jeweler. "UL mark," she said. "Correct." They ran the EAP drill one last time. This time, Naomi stood at the gate with her phone and a stopwatch. Miguel's whistle cut the air. Rolls moved like they'd been waiting next to the door. Sloane's call flowed like a script without feeling scripted. Mr. Ortiz waved invisible sirens. Miss Jean parted a very real small crowd with a voice that could have managed a choir. "Time," Vivian asked. 1 minute, 51, Naomi said. She didn't smile, but her eyes lightened. "You wrote the poem, and now you can recite it." She clicked her pen, signed the inspection sheet, and then hesitated the way careful people do when they remember kindness is a part of the job. "I can't turn the power on without the final back office push," she said. "Red tape isn't a villain. It's just slow. 24 hours. You'll have my official report tonight and the re-energize order by tomorrow." Maya stepped forward, hands behind her back like a witness at something that mattered. "We wait," she said, not a complaint, an agreement. Naomi looked at her, at Jack, at Vivian, at the small army of neighbors pretending they hadn't been holding their breath. "You did this right," she said. "That doesn't always happen. Thank you for making my job easy." "It didn't feel easy," Jack said. "Doing it right never does," Naomi replied. She shook hands. Jack's Miguel's Mr. Ortiz's even Miss Jean's, who treated officialdom with skepticism and was treating this official with grace. She offered a soft salute to Maya, then walked away without theater, the inspection sheet tucked like a solved riddle. As twilight came, the pickup's floods stayed off. No one needed the glow sticks. They walked the field in the blue hour and imagined light returning not as spectacle, but as routine. Vivian held the rubber ball in her pocket and felt its familiar tap against her leg. She thought of the alley the first throw the way a moment rewires a week. She thought of Naomi's stopwatch the way a minute can stretch into a promise. "Tomorrow," she said. "Tomorrow," Jack echoed. Maya looked up at the dark poles that would soon glow like good decisions. "When it matters," she said, "you get ready before it does." They stood there and let the sentence sink in like concrete, like trust, like a ramp you build, not for a photo, but for a person you haven't met yet who will be grateful in a voice you'll never hear. Naomi's email landed like a key sliding into a lock, re-energize order. Roosevelt, lot compliance items verified. Re-energize granted effective 1800 today. N. Chen Infrastructure Oversight. At 5:59 p.m. Rosa stood at the new timer box with its small silver lock, Miguel at the first base line with his whistle, and half the neighborhood at the fence holding their breath like a single organism. "Light isn't applause," Miguel said low. "It's permission." Rosa turned the key, pressed the breaker with the reverence of someone waking a patient, and the poles came alive, 1, 2, 3, 4, pouring down a clean wash that made the dirt honest and the faces clear. Mr. Ortiz whooped. Miss Jean pretended she didn't, then clapped once and kept clapping. Back to boring, Naomi had promised. Under those lights, boring looked beautiful. Maya lifted her glove into the glow as if it could capture some. "Feels like noon," she whispered. Vivian let the scene stand without commentary, the ball in her pocket tapping her leg like a satisfied metronome. She'd sent Naomi the photo log every evening. She'd filed Rosa's permits and Dal's concrete receipts under a tab labeled, "We did it right." Now, the only thing to do was to do the thing. Short practice, Miguel called. Then water, then home. We don't waste the first night on swagger. They ran like they'd missed this for a century instead of 3 nights. A soft toss, a clean relay. A runner called out at second who laughed because he knew the tag was pretty. In the 4th inning, they didn't play because there was no game. They learned what light feels like when it's earned, not loud, not theatrical, just steady. Afterward, as gear returned to its bins with a new satisfying clunk, Sloane jogged across the grass with a manila envelope hugged to her chest. "Mail," she said breathless, "the kind they still print on expensive paper." Vivian took the envelope, thumbed the seal, and slid out a letter with a crest at the top and a sentence that rearranged the week. The National Youth League invites the Roosevelt Skyballs to the Eastern Regional Showcase, June 12, 16. Miguel's face barely moved, but his eyes gave away the weather inside. "That's 5 days." Jaden bounced on his toes. "We're a real team," Mari shouted. "We already were," and the rest of the sentence dissolved into laughter. Maya read the letter twice, mouth open, and then closed. She looked up at Vivian, and then at Jack, the question forming before the fear. "We're good enough to go." "We're good enough to learn," Miguel said. "And that's what tournaments measure when they're honest." Vivian held the letter and felt its weight like a different kind of ball. "We'll need logistics," she said. "Transportation, lodging, consent forms, snack plans that don't turn into sugar riots. I can get the van," Jack said. "Not the pretty kind, the kind that squeaks and still shows up." Miss Jean waved a dish towel from her window like a flag. "I got lemonade and a casserole that travels." Sloane already had her phone open to a checklist. Tournament registration, medical release for each kid, EAP travel version, D&O rider that covers off-site. I'll make a binder thick enough to stop a rumor. Maya stood very still in the middle of rising plans. Under the lights, her face looked older by a year. "Coach," she said. Miguel stepped closer. "Yes." "What if I freeze?" she asked, not loud. "What if the big field swallows my throw? You won't," Miguel said. "And if you do, you breathe, you set your feet, you throw the next one. Nerves aren't the enemy. The enemy is the lie that you have to be a statue to be brave." Jack squeezed her shoulder. "You change the world one small, accurate motion at a time." Maya nodded like she could carry boldness in her pocket if she folded it carefully. They broke for home. Vivian stayed back to lock the new box to run her hand along the smooth, cool ramp handrail to memorize the taste of a win that didn't need a camera. "Tomorrow," Jack said beside her. "Tomorrow," she agreed. The next morning brought 2 envelopes, one thick and hopeful in Vivian's mailbox regional showcase packet, complete with schedules and a code of conduct that made her heart sing, and one thin and blunt in Jack's notice of custody mediation. June 21st, 10:00 a.m. He read it at his tiny kitchen table while Maya worked a math worksheet with an eraser that left pink snow. He waited to speak until he could trust his voice. "We have a meeting," he said, "at court." "Because of me?" she asked. "Because of us," he said. "Because grown-ups make plans and then compare them in front of a judge so a child doesn't get tugged like a rope." She frowned at the paper like she could scare it into kindness. "What do they want?" he exhaled. "They're going to ask if you're safe. They'll bring up the power cut. They'll bring up a lot of things." He tapped the date. "We'll bring the truth." They brought the letter to the field that afternoon. Vivian read it once and didn't reach for a platitude. "They'll say, 'I bring chaos.' Jack said the old shame trying for a seat it no longer deserved. They'll say the lights went out on my watch." "And we'll say what's real," Vivian said. "That you built a safer place in public than most people do in private." Maya looked from one to the other. "What can I do?" Keep being a kid, Jack said. That's Exhibit A. Sloane arrived mid-conversation, a folder under her arm and the kind of expression that meant her brain had been running all morning and her mouth had kept up. News, she said, and it wasn't the tournament kind. Ortiz's video gave me the logo. From there, I worked the latter's state license records vendor lists, LinkedIn, breadcrumbs. Ironwatch has a subcontractor that logs night patrols on this side of town, North Harbor Protective. Miguel looked at the folder like a skeptic looks at a miracle. I know that name. Everyone knows that name if they pay attention, Sloane said. They do the job that gets done when you don't want to say you told someone to do it. I couldn't get their internal logs, obviously, she added, because ethics mattered even when anger asked for shortcuts. But a friend at a warehouse handed me a copy of a service sheet from the night our net got cut, same hour, same route. And she slid another paper free, a payment ledger from a Hale subsidiary, showing a line item to North Harbor on that same date marked Community Liaison. It's thin, not courtroom thick. But it's smoke. Jack's jaw set. He'll say it's coincidence. He will, Sloane said. Which is why we don't run to a microphone. We run to systems. We file the police report with Ortiz's video and Naomi's inspection log. We note the vendor relationship in COM Inc. We don't say Hale's name in public. We say we mend. Vivian nodded, the discipline of it fitting her bones. We're not in the business of accusations. We're in the business of light. Sloane glanced at Jack. For court, I'll build you a binder inspection reports, insurance certificates, EAP drill logs, letters from teachers, the tournament invitation photos of the ADA ramp, and stanchions Naomi's re-energize order. Family court cares about best interests. We'll show a safe community with names and signatures. Jack swallowed. Thank you. Vivian touched the folder. I'll testify, she said. Not about money. About how you father. He blinked, the honesty of it knocking something loose. I didn't ask? You don't have to, she said. You asked when you showed up 30 days in a row. His answer was a nod that carried more gratitude than any speech. A shadow crossed the dirt. Miguel lifted his chin at it and smiled. Looks like your binder's about to get a letter of recommendation. Naomi approached in her windbreaker, hands in pockets against a friendly wind. I heard congratulations are due, she said. Tournament Vivian held up the letter. Yes. Good, Naomi said. Travel EAP drafting, Sloane replied. Naomi looked at Maya. When you're away, remember strangers don't get closer just because they're smiling. And ice is free. Use it. Maya grinned. Yes, ma'am. Naomi turned to Jack. Mr. Carter, a mediation notice is not a verdict. Judges like paper. You have good paper? We do, he said. She exhaled like a person pleased to be able to offer clean advice. I can't come to court. Conflict, but you have my inspection report. It's written in English and not acronyms. That helps. Thank you, Vivian said. Naomi nodded at the poles at the ramp at the EAP laminated within an inch of its life. Keep it boring, she said, and walked on. That night practice ran like a rehearsal for steadiness. No heroics, no tricks. Miguel set the standard and lowered the volume. We're not here to impress. We're here to improve. During water break, Sloane's phone buzzed with a name that always arrived with a sigh attached. She stepped away, took the call, returned with her jaw set. Gregory, she said to Vivian, offering the phone. Committee line. Vivian listened as he skipped pleasantries. You're going to that tournament? Yes. You're planning to sit in a family court waiting room. Yes. You know what I'm going to say next. Say it anyway. Optics become obligations, Gregory said. The more visible you are as the face of this trust, the more you speak. As Vivian Stone, rescuer. The harder it is for me to argue there's no conflict with our shareholders. You've been careful, I admit that. But appearance of entanglement is a thing. If a plaintiff's attorney ever decides to tie your name to an incident, they won't care that our lawyers can separate entities on paper. Vivian watched Maya teaching a younger boy how to square his shoulders without squaring his fear. Gregory, this is not me flexing. This is me staying. "I believe you," he said. "The market won't. A few directors are pressing for a clear line. If you intend to be the public voice of this project on the news in court hallways at a regional showcase, the governance solution is simple, if unpleasant." She finished the sentence he didn't want to. Step aside. There was the smallest exhale relief at not being the one to say it. Temporarily. You keep your stake. You chair the new foundation if you must. But you don't sign earnings reports with one hand and wave from a ball field with the other. It muddies things. Silence lay down between them. It wasn't hostile. It was the quiet that happens when two truths take turns breathing. "Gregory," she said at last, "I'm not choosing press, I'm choosing proximity. And if proximity costs me a title, the title was overpriced." "I wish you'd let me sell that differently," he said, a rueful smile in the line. "Sell it, however you like," she said softly. "I'm buying the lights." He didn't push. He'd learned when pushing broke things. "We meet Monday," he said. "No ambush, just questions. Be ready." "I am," she said. She handed Sloane the phone. Sloane's eyebrows asked the question. Vivian answered with a nod that said the future had just pivoted. Jack had been watching without intruding. He stepped closer. "You okay? I'm aligned," she said. "That sounds like a yes that knows its price." "It is," she said. He nodded, then looked at the field at the poles humming their small municipal hymn. "I can't pay you back." "You're not supposed to," she said. "Just throw when it matters." Maya jogged up, housing a grin big enough for two. "Coach says we can do a scrimmage Friday if the weather listens." "Then we'll invite the weather," Vivian said. When the practice ended, the lights shut off with a clean click, no drama, just schedule. People drifted toward Maple Avenue, voices low and content like a church letting out without anybody naming it. Vivian stood at the gate a moment longer. The rubber ball in her pocket knocked once-twice a metronome for decisions. Sloane stepped beside her. "If we do this, if you step back at work, people will say you lost something." "I know," Vivian said. "I just watched a child gain a field. I like that math better." Sloane smiled. "I'll build the binder. You build the day." They walked out together into a city that had not changed but somehow felt different. Above the school a plane drew a white scratch across the blue. Below it a girl carried a glove like a future and a man carried a toolbox like a promise. At the curb, Jack turned. "See you tomorrow." "See you tomorrow," Vivian said. The ball tapped her thigh. The decision tapped back. "Breathe, then throw." Miguel said, voice low enough to steady hands. "It's just another diamond with better paint." Day 35. The Eastern Regional Showcase rose from a sprawl of turf and brick like a promise kept 6 pristine fields, scoreboards that blinked like orderly stars, an announcement booth that pronounced names without guessing. The Skyballs arrived in a dented 12-seater with a cooler and a binder the way pilgrimages have always traveled. Sloane handled check-in with a smile that could outlast bureaucracy. Medical releases, roster travel, EAP concussion protocol, she recited, were dull on purpose. The tournament director, a former college catcher with sunscreen in the right places, flipped through the binder and blinked. "You brought an emergency action plan to an away game," Vivian answered without posing. "We bring a way out whenever we bring a way in." "Wish every team did," he said, stamping their packet. "Field 3 in 20. The kids stared at the complex like their neighborhood had grown a cousin who lived in a nicer zip code. "Smells like new grass," Tick said, stepping onto the turf. "It's rubber crumb," Maya corrected, grinning anyway. "Still counts." Jack hauled gear like a man who respected gravity and the quiet it taught. He glanced at Vivian. "You good?" "I'm here," she said. "That's the good I can control." Game 1 opened under a noon sun that emptied pockets and filled stands. The other team, the Arlington Hawks, wore matching warm-ups and a confidence borrowed from their sponsors. The Skyballs wore mismatched socks, borrowed swagger, and a habit of listening. Maya's first pitch cut the zone like a clean sentence. Strike 1. She worked edges with a wrist the neighborhood had trained and the city had measured. Jaden framed quietly a small target with a sure glove. In the second, a hawk cracked a liner toward the gap. Yun misread it, took a false step in, then sprinted back glove, stretching for a ball the day had already decided. It fell. 2 runs scored. Yun's jaw quivered. Miguel went to him in the shallow outfield and touched 2 fingers to his shoulder. You owe us nothing but the next play. Yun nodded, eyes wet, and breathed like he'd been taught to breathe when the crowd grows teeth. The inning ended. In the 4th, Mari turned a sharp grounder into an out and a message. In the 5th, Jaden gunned down a runner at second and pointed calmly at nothing, which is how you celebrate when you mean to stay. Bottom of the 6th, Maya at the plate tie game, 2 out. She didn't swing for myth. She dropped a bunt like a note under a door, ran forced to throw. It sailed. Jaden scored. 3-2 Skyballs. They won by routine, not magic. Perfect is a rumor Miguel said in the huddle. We'll take good and keep going. They broke for shade. Sloan handed out orange slices like sacrament. Vivian pressed a foil packet of ice into Yun's hand, not for an injury, but for a feeling. Hold this under your cap, she said. It cools the parts you can't name. He sniffed and laughed, the combination that means a child is returning to Earth. I thought I lost it. You don't lose something you can practice, she said. You just meet it again. Day 36 brought a morning game, and one of the reasons adults were invented. During infield drills, Tino rolled his ankle on the edge of the bullpen mound, a twist with a sound everyone pretends they didn't hear. He sat, hard, face white. Miguel didn't yell. He pointed. Drill. They moved like rehearsal, turning into plan. Sloan dialed. Tournament med tent 1 minor ankle twist. Conscious no deformity we're at. Field 2, first base side crowd controlled. Jack knelt beside Tino, hand steady on the shin voice, steadier. You breathe, we count. One parent swept the curious to the chalked muster square. Another held the gate and waved med staff in like VIPs. The trainer arrived with tape and tenderness-checked range of motion ruled out drama. You ran that like you wanted me out of a job, the trainer said, impressed. I want you bored, Miguel replied. By noon, Tino had an elastic wrap, a grin, and a seat in the dugout. He turned into a drum kit. The Skyballs beat the Frederick Foxes 2-1 in the kind of game that looks dull to people who don't appreciate clean throws. The tournament director stopped by afterward. When a team's EAP is prettier than their uniforms, he said, you circle them in the program. Day 37 was a 1-run grind against kids who swung like they were auditioning. Yun bobbled a slow roller and stared at his hands as if they'd lied. In the dugout, he sat too still for a heartbeat too long, then covered his face. Maya took the rubber ball from her bag, the scuffed one with a life older than trophies, and pressed it into his palm. When it matters, she said, not performing, you throw again. He looked at the ball at her at the field. What if I don't know how? Then we learn in public, she said. That's all baseball is. In the 6th, a flare blooped into shallow right. Yun charged, slid, trapped it clean, popped up and threw a perfect arc to first. Out. He didn't roar. He looked at the ball like it had taught him something and whispered thanks. They finished pool play 3-0, not because destiny owed them, but because discipline rarely loses 3 coin flips in a row. That night, a hotel conference room became a film room. Folding chairs, pizza paper plates, Miguel drawing roots with a water bottle cap, Jack demonstrating a safe slide using a folded towel, and an ache he hid better than he felt. Miss Jean, who had declared Hotel Ice civilized, sat in the back with her knitting and her commentary. Remember, Miguel said, tapping the whiteboard like it could hear safety beats, swagger. If we are smart for 9 innings, we win 7. If we are loud for 9, we lose 5. Vivian's phone buzzed. Sloane's did too, then both again. The room's hum shifted. Even the kids felt the way air changes when weather moves in. Sloane stepped into the hall, returned with a manila envelope that wasn't pizza and wasn't optional. From counsel, she said quietly to Vivian. Shareholders' attorneys. Appearance of entanglement. Vivian took the letter like a person takes a test they didn't ask for and aren't afraid of. She read. She didn't blink. She passed it to Sloane, who summarized for Jack Miguel the adults who'd earned the right to hear. If Vivian continues to serve as the public face of the community trust, Sloane said, attend media at the tournament, or appear in court hallways next week as an advocate, it strengthens the case that there's no practical separation between her personal philanthropy and her corporate leadership. The governance solution on the table she hesitated, then finished clean, is for her to step aside as CEO to keep the lines bright. Silence, the kind that tests load-bearing walls. Vivian folded the letter once and then unfolded it. I've built towers enough, she said, finally voice steady. Fields feel more honest. Jack swallowed. You'd give up the chair. I'd give up a title, she said. Chairs are for resting. I'm not tired. Sloane's eyes searched her face for regret and found resolve instead. They expected a fight. They get a signature, Vivian said. She took out a pen, the same pen she'd used to sign the trust papers and EAP logs, and scribbled her acceptance of the board's temporary governance plan on the bottom line Sloane pointed to. The stroke sounded like a door closing on carpet. She exhaled. The room didn't clap. That would have been the wrong movie. Instead, Miguel nodded as if a play had been called and executed. You okay? Jack asked the question, carrying more than corporate concern. I'm right-sized, she said. I don't want to stand over anything I didn't bleed for. I want to stand with. He put his hand over his heart, a small, involuntary gesture. Thank you for choosing with. Miss Jean sniffed discreetly and pretended the yarn was to blame. Sloane squeezed Vivian's shoulder. I'll handle the board, I know, Vivian said. I'll handle the bleachers. Day 38. Semi-final. The opponent wore polished cleats and carried their own rumors. The Skyballs carried a cooler a mantra and no need to explain their faces to anyone. Bottom third tied 1-1 runners on the corners. Miguel called time and met Maya halfway. They've seen your fastball. Give me the change. Pull the string like you're telling a secret. She nodded, released a split change that died on the way to the plate like a bird deciding not to fly. Strike 3 knees locked. Jaden popped up fired to third and Mari slapped a tag that had punctuation. Double play. The dugout didn't erupt. It exhaled. In the 5th, Yun worked a deep count, fouled off a pitch that would have written a sadder paragraph, then chopped a grounder that asked a question the defense couldn't answer in time. He ran through first like the base owed him rent. 2 pitches later, Maya sent a gapper to right center legs, a metronome Yun, churning the relay late. 3-1. It held. They were in the final. They walked off without chest thumps. Miss Jean did enough thumping for everybody beating a seat with a rolled program. You can be humble tomorrow, she yelled, then smiled hard enough to scare away whatever had been shadowing her all year. Night slid in with the regulation hum of field lights. The public address announcer read tomorrow's schedule in a voice that made mundane sound official. Championship Field, 1:07 p.m. Miguel checked the forecast on his phone. Showers possible, he said. No lightning in the radius. He turned to the kids. Weather is like pressure. It's only a problem if it's electric. Vivian stood at the rail and let the joy pass through instead of pool. Sloane joined her, holding her phone like a truce flag. Board comms went out, she said. You'll step aside for 6 months while we formalize the Foundation's independence. They're calling it a sabbatical. Call it whatever keeps our paperwork boring, Vivian said. Are you sad? Sloane asked softly. I'm clear, Vivian replied. My calendar looks like a field. Jack approached water bottle in each hand. He handed one to Vivian. To choosing the hard thing before the easy thing asks you to lie about it. She tapped the bottle to his. To standing with. Thunder didn't speak. Good. The rules were simple. If lightning talked, everyone listened from inside. The sky kept its words to itself. But by late afternoon, day 39th, a soft rain stitched itself across the complex, the kind that makes kids faster and adults cautious. Tournament officials conferred under a canopy-consulted radar, and the weather policy laminated on the clipboard play may continue in light rain with no lightning detected within 10 miles. Electrical systems monitored. If lights fail, suspend immediately. Rosa, who had showed up because she didn't know how not to stood under the grandstand eyes on the fixture readouts. Grid's stable, she told Vivian. We may get a flicker when the substation burps, but it's noise not news. The first sprinkle darkened the baseline like an underline. Maya tilted her head back and let a few drops land on her face as if to meet the opponent before it introduced itself. She looked at Jack, then at Vivian. You ready? Jack asked. She answered the way she always did with a question. Are we? Miguel clapped his hands and pulled the team close under the dugout lip. Listen. Rain is honest. It treats everybody the same. We adjust, we shorten our strides, we keep our eyes soft, and we choose safe over flash. We don't slide into puddles to look cool. We don't throw across our body because a camera points at us. We win by being the same people we were on Roosevelt with cones and a whistle. Maya touched the rubber ball in her bag and nodded. When it matters, she murmured like a private oath. The lights did flicker once an eyelid's worth settled and held. The umpire called play ball voice clear against the patter. The crowd pulled on ponchos and hope. Vivian zipped her windbreaker, feeling the line she'd crossed and the one she was drawing every minute she stayed. Jack stood at the fence water, dampening his hair, that old ache in his elbow humming along with the lights. He glanced at Vivian, and she glanced back, and whatever needed saying did not require the weather to improve. See it, he called to Maya. Throw it, she answered. The first pitch left her hand like a story with a good beginning, and the rain, respectful of narratives that know where they're going, only pressed its palms lightly against the field, waiting to see who would keep their footing when the game asked its hardest questions. Keep it simple, Miguel said. Voice steady as the rain. Short strides, low throws. No heroics in the rain. Field 1 glowed under the tall lamps, each drop lit like a bead on a string. The rain wasn't a storm, not yet, just a steady persuasion. The Jacksonville Jets warmed up with the efficiency of kids who've been told they're inevitable. The skyballs moved like kids who'd practiced showing up. Rosa stood beneath the grandstand with a tablet and a line to the power room. Grid's clean, she called to Vivian. If you see a flicker, it's a hiccup, not an omen. Sloan passed towels down the dugout like a medic who didn't traffic in drama. Miss Jean had claimed the top bleacher beneath a hooded poncho cane wedged to keep her seat. She surveyed the field as if she were reading a will. Maya rolled the ball in her hand, feeling the seams rise like truth. Jack leaned on the rail rein, slicking his hair flat. One thing, he said, quiet enough for just her. They're hunting your fastball. Give me that split change we practice soft grip, no twist, 1 or 2 per batter. Your shoulder today, your career tomorrow. Miguel joined them, mirroring the caution. We'll watch your pitch count. No martyrs. You understand the difference between brave and stubborn. Maya nodded. Brave knows where the line is. Exactly, Miguel said. Go draw it. The umpire called play ball, and the game wrote its first sentence. Top of the first, the Jets' leadoff hitter slapped a grounder between first and second. Murray ranged over, picked clean through low, and true. Out. The next kid swung through a fastball that rode just enough. The third fouled off 2, waited on the heater, and got a change that floated, blinked, and sat down without apology. Strike 3. The pitch count stayed friendly. The dugout breathed. Bottom of the first, Jaden worked a walk like a craftsman. Murray bounced a single into left. A fielder's choice left runners at the corners. Maya stepped in with 2 out rain-drawing commas on her helmet. She didn't muscle it. She laid down a bunt so proper the infield stared a beat too long. Safe at first. Jaden scored, 1 Neo. The Jets answered in the third. A cue shot died in the wet grass and somehow turned into a double. A slow roller turned into a fast mistake when Yun's plant foot skated out from under him. 2 batters later, a bloop into right center, no villain, no hero, just physics tied the game. 1-1. Miguel called time met Maya at the back of the mound where the dirt held just enough grit to matter. "You're fine," he said. Eyes soft. Rain makes amateurs don't let it. Fourth inning. The Jets adjusted. They stopped chasing. They fouled off the heater and dared Maya to throw a third. She shook Jaden off, glanced at Jack, who tapped his own index and middle fingers together in the smallest sign, and delivered that split change. It drifted like a yes that becomes a maybe halfway across. The batter committed to a story that the ball no longer believed. Strikeout. Jack didn't smile. He clipped a towel back on the fence and pretended rain was the only thing on his face. But in the fifth, the Jets' number 4 hitter, Bigger Kid, quiet eyes, waited on 2 changes in a row, then turned on a fastball that came in belt high. A line drive split the gap before anyone could name it. 2 bases. A grounder moved him to third. A soft fly turned into a run because wet air can carry what dry air declines. 1-2. Bottom of the 5th, Skyballs got the run back without fanfare. Tick drew a walk, stole second on a pitch that didn't want to be thrown. Mari chopped a ball that died in the grass and beat it by a step born of stubbornness. Jaden lifted a shallow fly. The Jets' second baseman backpedaled, slipped, recovered, fired home late by a grace note. 2-2. Rain thickened to a polite insistence. Tournament staff checked radar. No lightning. Policy held. Play continued. 6th inning opened with a miscue that baseball saves for nights like this. A routine grounder to third hit the lip where turf met clay, hopped like it had changed its mind, and clipped the heel of Mari's glove. Runner on. A bunt and a single. Later the Jets squeezed a run across with the cold efficiency of kids who'd been taught to love the unpretty. 2-3. Maya walked back to the dugout, chewing disappointment carefully. She sat elbows on knees, eyes on nothing. The rain softened on the roof, drumming like fingers on a table. Vivian crouched next to her windbreaker, dripping at the edges. "You are not the weather," she said. "They're reading one thing. You write another." "What if the pen runs out?" Maya asked, a wry half-smile peeking through. "Then you steal a pencil," Vivian said, "and you push harder." Jack knelt on Maya's other side. "You don't have to win this in one swing. You win it by being smart 5 times in a row." "I only get one at a time," Maya said. "Then make your one matter," he answered. "That's the whole prayer." Top of the 7th, last at-bats for the Jets. Miguel went a small ball conservative. Corners in, outfield shallow. Maya mixed speeds, honored the pitch count, took the groundouts the rain offered. A 2-out single threatened irritation, but Jaden backpicked the runner at first, snap throw, tag punctuation. The inning ended on discipline. The Skyballs jogged in with the kind of quiet that precedes loud things. Bottom 7. The scoreboard read like a dare, Jacks 3, RSB 2. The public address announcer's voice softened as if the weather itself were listening. Tick led off, worked it full, and went down on a pitch that would have been ball 4 on a drier night. 1 out. Yun came up next. He looked at Miguel, then at Maya, then at the bat like it might sabotage him or save him. He fouled one, took one, then shot a grounder through the 6-hole with more relief than rage. Safe at first. The dugout exhaled. Mari squared to bunt, pulled back, and slashed a single into right. Yun went first to third with a slide that stayed honest. The Jets' coach walked to the mound with a towel on his shoulder and a sentence under his breath. He changed pitchers. New arm, new timing. Jaden popped up a fastball to second. The catch was sure. 2 outs. Maya stepped in. Rain beat it on the bill of her helmet and slid down like second thoughts she refused to keep. Field 1 felt bigger underwater. The crowd was a bouquet of umbrellas. Jack stood at the fence with his hands flat on the link, not gripping just there. Vivian stood beside him, her breath a metronome that belonged to a different life and somehow fit here better. The pitcher was taller than boys ought to be. He worked fast, glove-quiet eyes on the catcher's mitt like the rest of the world was impolite. First pitch fastball up, ball 1. Second pitch fastball at the knees, called strike. 1-1. Maya stepped out, inhaled, and saw the alley again, not the fear, but the angle. the way a throw knows where it belongs. She heard Jack's voice. You don't have to win this in one swing. She heard Vivian's, You are not the weather. She stepped back in. Third pitch a spinner on the inner half begging for a storybook swing. She let it pass. 2-1. Fourth, fastball middle. The obvious play was to try to be a hero. She did the other thing. She jab bunted down the third base line. It wasn't pretty, it was necessary. The ball kissed chalk and hugged it like a relative. The new pitcher lunged, slipped-righted, hurried. His throw yanked the first baseman into the lane. The ball skidded a wet brick. Yun crossed home. Tie game, 3-3. The dugout released a sound that had been waiting a whole childhood. Maya hit first and didn't stop. The first baseman scrambled, fired to second late. Safe. She dusted her hands and stood on the bag like she had rented it and liked the view. The Jets' coach signaled for time. Catcher stood, conferred, signaled back, keep it simple, hold the runner attack the zone. At the plate, Yun picked up the bat he sometimes trusted. He looked down at the rubber ball tied to the inside of the dugout fence as if it had a say. He looked at Maya, who simply tapped her helmet brim. You got this. First pitch strike on the black, 0-1. Second pitch high, 1-1. Yun exhaled, shoulders settling. He wasn't picturing glory. He was picturing the next correct thing. Third pitch a fastball that leaked toward the middle. He didn't overswing. He let the barrel be where the ball wanted to be. The bat met it with a sound that turned heads 2 fields over. A line drive tore into left center hard enough to argue and far enough to convince. Maya was in motion on contact, short strides, smart angles, the base path, a math problem she'd solved before. She rounded third rein on her lashes, Jack's voice in her bones. The throw came in hot and wrong. She slid straight through the front of home on a line Miguel would teach for a decade. Safe. The skyballs exploded without breaking anything. Jaden threw his mask skyward and then regretted it and then laughed. Mari jumped in place and then hugged someone and then everyone. Miguel's whistle stayed on his chest. He didn't need it. Miss Jean pounded the bleacher with her cane and shouted, That's rent paid, baby. Jack didn't lift Maya into the air. He wrapped her and let the hug be quiet. Rain flattened his hair and made his eyes honest. You didn't chase the picture in your head, he said into her helmet. You played the game in front of you. She smiled into his jersey, that child smile that makes adults find new beliefs. We threw when it mattered. Vivian stood a pace away, hands on her knees, crying the kind of tears that come with relief and recognition. She straightened, eyes bright. You just taught the whole field, she said, voice catching and clearing in the same breath. When it's time to throw, throw. The PA crackled with official joy. Final Roosevelt Skyballs, 4. Jacksonville Jets, 3. The rain backed off to clapping. The lights turned puddles into mirrors. The awards table looked like a folding altar. The tournament director called teams forward with a voice that made plastic trophies feel like heirlooms. The Jets accepted second with shoulders square. The Skyballs crowded around a silver cup, fingerprints immediate. Then the director held up one more plaque. We don't always give this, he said, but when we do, it matters. Safety and sportsmanship recognition. For an emergency action plan that made our trainer bored for travel waivers neat enough to frame and for stopping play once to check on a kid who was on the other team. Roosevelt Skyballs. Thank you for reminding us games can be careful and fierce at the same time. Miguel accepted the plaque like a contract. Boring wins, he said into the mic. The crowd laughed because they knew it wasn't a joke. Photos were taken and would later be cropped and posted and liked. But a camera caught the thing that mattered without knowing why Jack head bent to Maya's no choreography. Vivian, one step behind them, hand light on Maya's back, not claiming, just staying. Miguel looking at the field instead of the lens. Sloan laughing at something Miss Jean said about lemon bars and destiny. The celebration was loud without being rude. Then the weather pulled its own curtain. The rain thickened and a wind from the east reminded everyone that victories can get wet. They packed fast and well. Cones nested. Bats returned to their bag in pairs. The AED was checked because habit doesn't take nights off. They left the dugout cleaner than they found it. On the sidewalk under the shelter of the grandstand, they huddled one last time. Miguel put a palm on the cup as if to ground it. "You didn't win on a swing," he said. "You won on a series of correct small choices. That scales. Remember that when life throws you tournaments." "Yes, Coach," the chorus answered. Naomi, who had somehow arrived without anyone noticing and had stood under the eave like a satisfied auditor, stepped forward with a smile that made her look 10 years younger. "Nice footwork at home," she said to Maya. "And nice paperwork all week." Maya grinned. "Both matter. Most people learn that the hard way," Naomi said. "You learned it in a week. They loaded the van. Miss Jean passed out wrapped sandwiches and declarations of excellence. Rosa closed her tablet satisfied with a grid that had behaved. The director shook Miguel's hand twice because once felt insufficient. On the ride back, the van's AC squeaked a lullaby. Kids drifted to sleep with medals on their chests and grass in their socks. Sloane sat up front with a list labeled Court Binder Editions Tournament. Vivian watched the road through rain that the wipers negotiated into reason. Jack drove shoulders easy for the first time in a long time. He glanced in the rear view and caught Maya asleep with her glove face up like a boat at anchor. He looked at Vivian, then back at the road. "You still coming to the courthouse?" he asked. "I'll be there with a seat and a pen," she said, "and a binder that says you built something safe." He nodded. "They might not care we won." "I'm not bringing the score," she said. "I'm bringing the way you coach a bedtime and a breakfast. Judges see that, even when they don't clap." He didn't speak for a mile. Then, softer than the tires on wet asphalt. "Thank you for standing with and not over." She turned the ball in her pocket with her thumb. "Standing with is the only stance I can believe in." The city came up out of the rain, familiar and newly possible. Field lights back at Roosevelt would be off by the time they arrived, the timer box made sure of it. But the habit would be there, waiting. When they turned onto Maple, the block looked sleepy and proud. A neighbor had taped a banner from a window, "Welcome home skyballs in marker that had fought the damp and won." They spilled out, careful not to wake the block too much, and walked to the gate just to touch it. Maya stepped onto the ramp without thinking, hand-brushing the rail they'd poured in a hurry and with care. She looked up at the dark poles and smiled at the memory of them lit. "Tomorrow we rest?" she asked. Miguel laughed. "Tomorrow we stretch." "Rest is a stretch with your eyes closed." They stood there a beat longer than weather allowed, then parted for porches and hallways and stoves. Vivian lingered. Jack lingered. Maya stood between them, metal warm from her skin. "Throw when it matters," she said, not to end the night but to name it. And sometimes Jack added bunt. Vivian smiled through the last of the rain. And sometimes she said, "Stay." The lights were off, the field was dark, but the street lamps along Maple kept their shift and the puddles held small versions of the sky. Some places deserve to be lit even when no one is watching. Especially then. Day 41. Morning. The courthouse smelled like coffee that had lived too many lives. Jack stood in the hallway with a navy binder pressed flat against his chest, breathing the way Miguel taught the kids to breathe before a throw, slow in, slower out. Maya sat between Miss Jean and Sloane on a wooden bench. She dangled her medal and tried to look like a kid and not a test. Vivian arrived without Angle's hair pulled back coat plain. She didn't hug, she didn't grandstand. She touched Jack's elbow and said the sentence he needed most. "We brought the truth," she murmured. "And we brought it neatly." Sloane flipped the binder open for the last check. Tabs like a chorus line, insurance certificates, background checks, EAP drill logs, Naomi Chen report, tournament safety award, coach letters, teacher notes, photo ADA ramp, photo spectator line, re-energize order. She slid one more page into a plastic sleeve, a printout of the safety and sportsmanship plaque from the showcase. Miss Jean sniffed. "Judges love neat. Neat says you'll show up in the morning." The mediator's room had chairs that didn't squeak and a table that had seen whole marriages summed up in Post-its. Across from Jack sat Maya's mother. She wore the tired look of someone who hadn't meant to become an adversary and didn't like the word. Her attorney whispered her shoulders rose, her shoulders fell. The mediator, a woman with soft eyes and a stopwatch, laid both palms on the table. "We are not here to relitigate the past," she said. "We are here to design the next 12 months for a child who needs predictability." She divided time on paper and insisted on commas between sentences. Jack spoke when invited, and only then. "She needs both of us," he said. "She also needs a home that keeps its promises, bedtime, breakfast, homework, a field that won't cut her feet." Vivian did not speak in the mediation. That wasn't her room. She sat behind Jack Penn's still presence, steady. Maya's mother looked at the schedule the mediator drew: primary residence with father, alternate weekends with mother, midweek dinner, shared decisions on school and health. Her mouth made a line, then softened. "I want her safe," she said quietly. "I want her to be a kid." Jack nodded. "So do I." By noon, they had agreement points penciled into something that wanted to be in order. The mediator gathered papers like a conductor gathering a score. The judge will review and sign if it meets the statute. She smiled at Maya. "You have good adults." Some days, Maya said, making them all laugh, the human kind of laugh. Afternoon Family Court, Part 3. The courtroom felt less like television and more like a waiting room for big decisions. The judge, late 40s, wore a patience that had been earned and a tie that had been chosen by thinking too long. He read the stipulation, flipped to the exhibits, and stopped at the inspection report. "This is written in plain English," he said, a little surprised. "City wrote it that way." Jack answered, "For people like us." "Good," the judge said. He continued through the binder. General liability, background checks, drills, tournament commendation for safety. Most people bring me scoreboards. You brought me routines. He leaned forward. "Miss Truestone, would you step up, please?" Vivian took the oath, right hand up, voice steady. The judge glanced at the caption, then back at her. "You understand we're not here to award trophies." "Yes, Your Honor," she said. "We're here to show a child's ordinary is sturdy." "What is your role with this?" Skyballs, he asked. "I fund and coordinate through a community trust," she said. I stepped aside from my corporate post to avoid entanglements. "We have insurance-written protocols and a habit of showing up. Mr. Carter does the work. You don't see packing snacks, teaching patience, leaving on time." The judge looked at Jack. "You aware the lights went out once?" "Yes," Jack said. "And you can see what we did next. We fixed it correctly, then we taught it to other people." The judge closed the binder, fingertips resting on the cover like he could feel the weight of routines through plastic. "Best interest of the child," he said, "is not a slogan. It's a list. Stability, safety, school continuity, willingness to foster the other parent's relationship. From what I've read and heard, you have built a scaffold around this child that encourages all four." He signed the order with a pen that clicked twice. Primary custody to father. Alternating weekends to mother with midweek dinner. Shared legal custody. Holidays divided evenly. Both parties will complete a co-parenting class within 60 days. Everybody breathe. Maya exhaled first, whispering to her metal like it could hear, "We did the boring things." Outside the courtroom, Jack leaned against the cool marble and pressed his eyes shut. When he opened them, he found Vivian watching him the way people watch a sunrise from a city sidewalk, trying not to make it a spectacle failing. "Thank you," he said simply. For what she asked. For not standing over, he said. For standing with. She smiled, small and real. "That's the only stance I can defend." Maya threaded her fingers through each of theirs and swung their hands like a rope she planned to climb. "Can we go, touch the gate?" she asked. After noodles, Miss Jean decreed. Justice pairs best with carbohydrates. Day 42. Late afternoon. Roosevelt's lot looked dressed without being fancy. Folding chairs waited in gentle rows. A bakery box on the snack table held cupcakes iced the color of patience. The new sign sat under a canvas edges peeking like a secret, learning to introduce itself. A city ribbon hung quiet scissors gleaming in Naomi's hand. Neighbors came as themselves, aprons still on name tags, still pinned babies riding hips, teenagers pretending they didn't care, and failing beautifully. Mr. Ortiz set a cooler down like an offering. Coach Alvarez wore his whistle out of habit and respect. Sloan arrived with a black tote and a grin. Vivian arched an eyebrow. "That tote looks like a resignation letter." "Close," Sloan said. "It's an offer letter. I'm leaving the company. I'm joining the trust full-time." She held up a signed page. "Director of Community Partnerships if you'll have me." Vivian didn't hug, but her eyes did something that looked like it. "I was hoping you'd say that before I had to beg. Begging is bad optics," Sloan deadpanned. "So is joy, according to some directors." She lowered her voice. "Gregory sent a note. He said, 'Keep the lights on and keep the lawyers bored.'" "I can deliver both," Vivian said. Naomi stepped to the mic the way a person steps into a kitchen where they have cooked before. "We have inspections and permits," she began, smiling when the crowd laughed. "We also have something my office can't issue, trust. That's earned by paper and by showing up." She nodded to Rosa Tadal to the parents who had practiced EAP roles until the stopwatch learned their names. "On behalf of the city, thank you for making my job easy and my sleep untroubled." She lifted the scissors. "By the authority vested in ordinary people doing things correctly," she said, "I hereby declare this field open for evenings that outlast excuses." The ribbon fell with a soft applause. Vivian took the mic, no podium, no logo. She waited for the quiet that means people want the words. "We've been calling this place a lot of names," she said. "The lot, the field, the dirt. Today, it gets the right one." She nodded to Maya, who took the canvas edge and pulled. The wood gleamed like something that had always been on its way here. "Throw when it matters." Field, owned by the community, held in trust. A second line in smaller letters, "Open Fields Alliance Safety. Access, belonging." Vivian's voice didn't swell. It settled. "We're launching the Open Fields Alliance free clinics on Saturdays, concussion and CPR training for volunteers. Small grants for gear, and a simple packet any neighborhood can copy how to light a field. Legally, how to run a drill, how to write a waiver in plain English." She lifted a slim folder. "Anyone who asks gets this. It's the playbook we wish someone had handed us." Miguel stepped forward, eyes damp. "A field isn't a miracle," he said into the mic. "It's a maintenance plan. We'll run it like one. Applause like rain, but warmer." Jack took his turn at the mic, which he didn't want, but accepted. He looked at Maya first. "I don't have a speech," he said. "I have a thank you. To the woman who could have sent a check and instead sent herself. To a city worker who brought a stopwatch and left us with light. To a neighborhood that chose boring over loud. You didn't fix my life. You gave my kid a place to be small and brave at the same time." He turned to Vivian, and the crowd listened the way crowds do when the right sentence is making its way to the front of a mouth. "You're not the rich person who comes and goes," he said. "You're the person who came and stayed." Vivian's answer was a nod and the gentlest correction. "I'm just someone who came and stayed," she said. "The rich part isn't the interesting part." Maya tugged the mic down to her height, no fear left in her pockets. "And we're going to teach other blocks how to do it," she said. "Because throwing when it matters isn't just for baseball." The plan after speeches was practice, not spectacle. Kids ran base path relays, parents learned where the muster square lived, a CPR demo drew teenagers who pretended they weren't paying attention and learned how to count compressions anyway. Sloan filmed 2 minutes of Naomi showing how to talk to dispatchers without forgetting to breathe. Under the sign, Maya pressed the scuffed rubber ball into the hand of a little boy who had been watching her for weeks from the edge of the fence. "Your turn," she said. "Keep it until you give it to someone smaller." "What if I drop it?" he asked. "Then pick it up," she said. "That's the whole game." Dusk came wearing gold. The new timer hummed like a satisfied cat. The poles lifted light into place as if it always belonged there. The field glowed not for show but for work, and the neighborhood put that light to use. Laughter in the outfield, a stroller rolling smooth up the ramp, Ms. Hill handing out sign-up sheets for homework help under the third base bleacher. Gregory appeared at the chain link in a suit that didn't mind dust. He didn't ask for a mic. He shook Jack's hand and Vivian's, then slid a small private grin toward Sloan. "For the record," he said, "this is better than a ribbon cutting with shareholders." "Shareholders are welcome," Vivian replied. "They can learn where the muster spot is." "Send me the playbook," he said. "I know a board that needs an EAP." Night completed itself. The cupcakes were reduced to crumbs and frosting on noses. Parents stacked chairs without being asked. The AED got checked one more time because habits are love in a uniform. The crowd thinned to the kind of few who always close the gate and look back once. Maya stood with her palms on the new sign reading every letter like they might shuffle in the night if she didn't memorize them. Jack wrapped an arm around her shoulders. Vivian stood on her other side, not quite touching, perfectly present. "Coach says, rest is a stretch with your eyes closed," Maya said. "He's right," Jack answered. "We stretch, then we sleep." Vivian looked up at the lights, their quiet, steady work, and then down at the ramp, the stanchions, the laminated EAP that flapped a little in a friendly breeze. "We'll leave them on tonight," she said, not to anyone in particular, "just because we can." Naomi heard and nodded. Timers can be kind. They walked to the gate together. Sloan turned back to snap one photo, not posed, not filtered. 3 people under a sign that didn't name any of them and somehow named them all. At Maple Avenue they paused because goodbyes deserve a second to land. "What now?" Jack asked. "Now we get boring," Vivian said. "Practice schedules, snack rotas, grant application, Saturday clinics. 100 small throws no one claps for." Maya squeezed their hands. "And we teach them all the sentence." Vivian smiled. "Say it." Maya tilted her head up and spoke as if the block needed reminding. "Throw when it matters. Stay when it counts," Jack added. "Build the lights before you need them," Vivian finished. They laughed the kind that seals a chapter without slamming it. They parted for porches and stairs and bedtime stories that mentioned trophies only once. Later, when the neighborhood slept, the timer clicked and the field stayed lit, empty bases shining like uncomplicated invitations. No camera, no speech, no proof demanded. Just a rectangle of earth, the color of effort held in light so kids who hadn't found it yet would see it from farther away. Some places deserve to be lit even when no one is watching. Especially then. And for every small hand still learning how to hold a ball, a bat, a promise, there would be this field, this sign, this community that learned to love the boring things until they turned into miracles. The night carried the glow 2 blocks over and 1 generation ahead. At its edge, the new sign caught the breeze and made a sound like paper turning. The story wasn't finished. It had simply found a way to go on without shouting. Before you go, take a breath with me. If this story lit even a small corner of your day, ask yourself, where is your field? What's the one small throw you can make that matters right now? It doesn't have to be loud. It just has to be yours. I'd love to hear from you. Tell me where you're watching from your city, your neighborhood, even the ball field or kitchen you're standing in. Drop it in the comments and add one word that captures what you're taking away from this story. Stay. Brave. Together. Your words might be the light someone else needs tonight. If this kind of storytelling feeds you, tap subscribe. Turn on the bell so you don't miss the next chapter of Courage, Love, and Everyday Miracles. It costs nothing, and it tells the platform this is the kind of goodness worth sharing. If you know someone who needs this reminder, someone building their own little field, share this video with them. One message can travel farther than you think. And because I read every comment, what does throw, when it matters, look like in your life? A phone call you've been putting off, a first step toward healing, a promise to show up for a kid's game. Tell me below. I'm listening. Thank you for spending your time here, for your heart and for the light you bring to this community. Until next time, Keep showing up, keep choosing the small correct things, and remember some places deserve to be lit, especially when no one is watching. I'm grateful you're here.